Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today's topic of discussion is antihypertensive drugs, and this is part 1 of these antihypertensive drugs. Hypertension means increase in the blood pressure. So what is the etiology of hypertension? A specific cause of hypertension is established only in 10 to 15% of the patients. That is, majority of the patients do not have any specific etiology. So the patients in whom no specific cause of hypertension is present. In this case, such type of hypertension is called essential or primary hypertension. It means that majority of the patients in our population are essential or primary hypertensive patients. The patients with a specific etiology, these patients are said to have secondary hypertension. There are certain factors which contribute to this hypertension. These include genetic factors, psychological stress, environmental and dietary factors. As regards the heritability, it is about 30%. Now here is the classification of hypertension on the basis of blood pressure. You can see here we labelize normal when the blood pressure is less than 120/80. That is 120 is systolic and 80 is diastolic blood pressure. We say the patient, we label the patient as pre-hypertensive when the blood pressure is between 120 to 135 of systolic and diastolic is 80 to 89. And we label the patient as hypertensive if it is more than or equal to 140/90 millimeter of mercury. And this hypertension is again divided into stage 1 and stage 2 depending upon the blood pressure. Now we are going to discuss the normal regulation of blood pressure. From your knowledge of physiology, you know that the blood pressure is equal to cardiac output and peripheral vascular resistance. So we can assess that in any change in the cardiac output, our peripheral vascular resistance can change the blood pressure. Normally, the blood pressure is maintained by regulation of the cardiac output and peripheral vascular resistance, which is exerted at 3 sites. That is number 1 arterioles, number 2 postcapillary venules, and number 3 is the heart. The second part that is going to control the blood pressure is the kidney, and number 3 are the baroreflexes. These baroreflexes are mediated by the autonomic nerves, and it is a combination of humoral mechanisms including the renin angiotensin aldosterone system. The fourth one is the local release of vasoactive substances. Now you can see here 4 sites at which blood pressure is controlled. First of all, the resistance arterioles. I am going to take the laser pointer. The first of all is there is the resistance arterioles. Then comes the capacitance venules. Then is the heart. Fourth one is the kidneys that control the volume of blood. Similarly, kidney also maintains the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. All of these collectively control the blood pressure. Any change at any of these points can change the blood pressure, can increase the blood pressure or can decrease the blood pressure. Are the drugs which act on any of these points can control the blood pressure. Now I'm going to tell you about baroreflexes. First of all, you just imagine when you transition from reclining to upright position. Means that you are sitting and then you stand up. Then what happens? Normally, when you gains upright position, Your blood pools in the capacitance vessels are in the veins that are present in your lungs. So blood pressure should fall, but normally it does not fall because our body tends to maintain it. How our body tends to maintain it? There are central sympathetic neurons from the vasomotor area of the medulla. They are tonically active. Similarly, there are carotid baroreceptors that are stimulated by the stretch of the vessel wall. When there is increase in the blood pressure, their walls will be stretched and these carotid baroreceptors will be stimulated. And this will be vice versa if there is fall in blood pressure. Similarly, baroreceptors activation inhibits the central sympathetic discharge and the vice versa. In this way, when we stand up, we usually do not experience fall in blood pressure because all of the mechanisms present in our body tend to maintain the blood pressure. Now you can see here their baroreceptor in carotid sinus. These give impulses to your brain, that is nucleus of the tractus solitarius, and from here the message goes to the vessel wall, that is sympathetic nerve endings are present in the vessel wall, and these vessel walls there are alpha or beta receptors, and these receptors respond according to the message from the baroreceptors in the carotid sinus, that is whether they are stretched because of increase in blood pressure or they are not stretched due to fall in the blood pressure. So these messages go and they the vessel wall, and then they come to the vessel wall and the vessel wall respond according to these messages. Now is the renal response to decreased blood pressure. We have discussed the baroreceptors, how baroreceptors maintain the blood pressure. Now is the renal response. I have told you the kidney is responsible for our controlling the blood volume, and they are responsible for long-term blood pressure control. If there is a reduction in the renal perfusion pressure, that will lead to increased absorption of salt and water. That is, kidney attempt to maintain this blood pressure. Moreover, there will be more renin production. This renin production in turn causes increase in angiotensin 2. And what this angiotensin 2 causes? It causes number 1, direct constriction of resistance vessels, and number 2, stimulation of aldosterone synthesis in the adrenal cortex. And this adrenal aldosterone causes increase in sodium absorption and water that will lead to increase intravascular blood volume. So the kidneys, in this way, kidneys maintains or control our blood pressure. Now is the renal response to decreased blood pressure. Number 2 response that comes from the kidney is the vasopressin. First of all, I have told you renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. Number 2 response that is concerned with the renal is the vasopressin. Vasopressin is released from the posterior pituitary, and it also plays a role in maintenance of blood pressure. How? They increase the water absorption from the kidney. Moreover, they also have vasoconstrictor action. So they will increase the water absorption, they will do vasoconstriction, and both of these points will lead to increase in the blood pressure. Here is the classification of antihypertensive agents, and you can see here number 1 are the diuretics. In diuretics there are different kind of diuretics. They may be thiazide diuretics, they may be loop diuretics, also called high ceiling diuretics, or they may be potassium sparing diuretics. On diuretics you will have a full lecture in detail. Second class is ACE inhibitors, that is angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. Third class is angiotensin receptor blockers, and the fourth is direct renin inhibitors. Fifth one is the beta adrenergic blockers, and you have studied in detail beta adrenergic blockers while studying ANM. The next class is calcium channel blockers. Similarly, there are certain drugs that have both combined action on beta and alpha receptors, and these are beta and alpha adrenergic blockers. Some similarly alpha adrenergic blockers, and there are certain central sympatholytics. We also have vasodilators. The vasodilators may be only arteriolar or both arteriolar and venous. And we have maybe adrenergic neuron blockers or ganglion blockers. Now we are going to discuss all these classes one by one. This is a diagrammatic picture that is present in your Kaizen. You can see here the different drugs where these different drugs act. First of all, we are going to discuss diuretics. How diuretics decrease the blood pressure? So first of all, they deplete the body sodium stores. When sodium is depleted, sodium goes out of the body. Along with sodium, water also goes. So the blood volume will decrease and cardiac output will decrease. I have told you that blood pressure is equal to cardiac output multiplied by peripheral vascular resistance. So if the blood volume and cardiac output is decreasing, blood pressure will decrease. After 6 to 8 weeks, cardiac output will return to normal, but peripheral vascular resistance decreases. This is the mechanism how the diuretics decrease the blood pressure. In initial days, there is depletion of the body sodium stores and water, but in next 6 to 8 weeks, cardiac output returns to normal, but peripheral vascular resistance decreases, so blood pressure decreases. Sodium is believed to contribute to vascular resistance. That is, if there is more sodium in your body, the vascular resistance will be more. How? Because they increase the vessel stiffness and neural activity. So there will be altered sodium calcium exchange with the resultant increase in intracellular calcium, and this increase in intracellular calcium will cause vessel stiffness, and this increased vessel stiffness will increase the blood pressure. These diuretics deplete the sodium stores, so there will be less vessel stiffness, so there will be decrease in the blood pressure. Diuretics are used in mild to moderate hypertension in patients who have normal renal and cardiac function. And usually they lower the blood pressure about to 10 to 15 millimeter of mercury. These diuretics may be used alone or they may be used in combination with sympathoplegics and vasodilators. Why? Because these sympathoplegics and vasodilators cause sodium retention. So you combine these vasodilators and sympathoplegics to reduce this sodium retention that vasodilators are causing. I will told you in detail when we will discuss vasodilators. Now the diuretics have different classes. I have told you that there is a complete lecture on diuretics. Here I am telling you that the thiazide diuretics are appropriate for most patients with mild or moderate normal renal and cardiac function. The patients who have normal renal and cardiac function and the patients that have mild or moderate hypertension, thiazide diuretics are drug of choice. The more powerful diuretics, also called high ceiling diuretics like furosemide, they are used in number 1 severe hypertension, number 2 when you are using multiple drugs that are causing sodium retention like vasodilators, like sympathoplegics. So you are going to combine these diuretics with vasodilators or sympathoplegics to reduce the sodium retention because diuretics deplete sodium from the body. Number 2, high ceiling diuretics are needed in renal insufficiency. I have told you thiazide diuretics are given with normal renal function, while high ceiling diuretics like furosemide, you can use this diuretic in patients who have renal insufficiency. Number 4, when glomerular filtration rate is less than 30 to 40 milliliter per minute, you can use furosemide. Similarly, in cardiac failure or cirrhosis, in both of these conditions, there is marked sodium retention. So we combine furosemide. We will use furosemide in this situation, not thiazide, furosemide. So furosemide is used in following 5 situations. Next class of diuretic is potassium sparing. I have told you thiazide diuretics. Then I have told you high ceiling or furosemide diuretics. Third type is potassium sparing diuretics. They are used to avoid excessive potassium depletion and to enhance the natriuretic effect of other diuretics. Fourth class is aldosterone antagonist, and these diuretics are used in patients with heart failure. These aldosterone antagonists are also diuretics. They are useful in patients with heart failure. In heart failure patients, they are very useful diuretics. Now is the toxicity of diuretics. With potassium, with the furosemide, with thiazide, and with other diuretics, there is potassium depletion. But this is not the case with potassium sparing diuretics. Magnesium depletion, impaired glucose tolerance, and increased serum lipid concentration can occur with diuretics. Diuretics can increase uric acid concentration, so they may precipitate gout. Potassium sparing diuretics may produce hyperkalemia in patients with renal insufficiency, or those taking ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers. These ACE inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers causes hyperkalemia. If you are combining these with potassium sparing diuretics, patient may suffer hyperkalemia. So do not combine potassium sparing diuretics with ACE inhibitors. Similarly, spironolactone is a aldosterone receptor antagonist and is a diuretic. It is associated with gynecomastia.